Before we dive into the chaos, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Have you ever had a peaceful weekend, destroyed by someone who believed the world revolved around them? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And it all began with a knock at my cabin door. It was a Friday evening. The sun was setting behind the pines, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange and pink. I had finally escaped the city, eager for some quiet. Time at my family's cabin, a place that had been in our family for generations. I had groceries, firewood stacked, and plans for nothing more than reading, fishing, and sipping coffee on the porch. But that peaceful plan came crashing down when Karen showed up. I didn't know her well, only by reputation. She was the self-appointed queen of the neighborhood association, even though, technically, this cabin wasn't under their HOA rules. Still, Karen acted as if she owned the entire lake. She strutted up my porch in her oversized sunglasses, clutching a clipboard like it was a weapon. And without so much as a hello, she said, "You'll need to vacate this cabin for the weekend." I already told my family we'd be staying here. I laughed, thinking it was some kind of bizarre joke. But Karen didn't crack a smile. She pushed her sunglasses up, narrowed her eyes, and added, "I'll need the keys immediately. The HOA has priority rights over community properties, and this cabin falls under that. Now, let me be clear. The cabin is legally mine. My grandfather built it with his own two hands long before any HOA existed. And yet here she was, demanding I hand it over as if it were a rental property she'd already booked. I calmly told her no. I explained that this wasn't an HOA property, that she had no authority, and that I was planning to stay the entire weekend. But Karen wasn't used to people denying her. Her face flushed red, and she stomped her foot like a spoiled child. "You don't understand," she snapped. "My family expects to be here," I told them. "They're on their way. You're going to make me look bad if you don't cooperate. Do you really want to be responsible for ruining my family's weekend?" I couldn't believe the entitlement dripping from her voice. She truly thought her reputation was more important than my rights. As a property owner, I repeated myself, "No, you are not staying here." That's when Karen's expression hardened. She stepped back, pulled out her phone, and said the words I'll never forget. "Fine. If you won't do the right thing, I'll call the cops. We'll see what they have to say about this." And with that, she dialed. The thing about entitled people like Karen is that they truly believe the law will bend in their favor. She stood on my porch, phone pressed to her ear, dramatically explaining to the police that I was illegally occupying her cabin. She even gave them my address like I was some sort of trespasser. I stood there in disbelief, listening to her weave a story that was so far removed from reality, it almost sounded rehearsed. "Yes, officer," she said sweetly. "He refuses to hand over the keys to our property. My family's been planning this for months, and he's trying to lock us out." When she hung up, she smirked. "They'll be here shortly. I suggest you pack up your things." I just shook my head. The audacity was unreal. I grabbed a chair, sat on my porch, and waited. If she thought I was going to cave out of fear, she was dead wrong. About 20 minutes later, headlights appeared through the trees. A county sheriff's car rolled up the dirt driveway. Karen practically leaped off the porch, waving her arms like she was hailing a cab in New York City. "Officers! Over here!" she shouted. Two deputies stepped out, calm but alert. One of them nodded toward me and asked, "Are you the property owner here?" Before I could even answer, Karen jumped in. No, I am. He's refusing to leave. This is supposed to be my family's weekend, and he's causing a disturbance." The deputies exchanged a glance. Clearly, they'd seen her type before. One turned to me and said, "Sir, can we see some proof of ownership?" I had come prepared. Years of hearing about HOA disputes made me cautious, so I always kept a folder of documents in the cabin. Without missing a beat, I went inside, retrieved the papers, and handed them over. Deed, tax records, utility bills, it was all there. The deputy flipped through the documents, nodded, and handed them back. "Everything checks out. This property belongs to him." Karen's face dropped. "What?" No, you don't understand. The HOA rules, The officer cut her off. Ma'am, this cabin is not under your HOA jurisdiction. You have no legal authority here. If you continue to make false claims, you could be facing charges for filing a false report. Karen's jaw clenched. She turned bright red, stammering, But, I told my family." The other deputy sighed. "That's not his problem. If you cause further issues tonight, you'll be the one escorted off this property." For the first time that evening, Karen went silent. Her perfect plan was crumbling before her eyes. But if I thought that was the end of it, I was wrong. Because Karen wasn't the type to walk away quietly. The deputies warned Karen one last time and left, their headlights disappearing into the night. I thought the ordeal was over. I imagined she'd stomp back to her own house, fume about her lost weekend, and move on. But that's not who Karen was. Karen didn't take no as an answer. To her, it was a challenge. I settled back into the cabin, brewed a cup of coffee, and tried to relax. But even through the crackle of the fireplace, I could hear something faint outside, the sound of a car idling. When I peeked through the curtains, there she was, parked just down the road, arms crossed, eyes locked on my cabin like a predator waiting for its prey. The hours crawled by. Around midnight, I finally went to bed, thinking she'd eventually give up. But early the next morning, the chaos began. I woke up to shouting. Karen was back, and this time she wasn't alone. 2 other women from the HOA stood with her, waving papers in the air as if they were legal summons. "We're issuing you a violation." One of them barked. I stepped outside, groggy but calm. "Violation? For what?" "For obstructing community enjoyment," Karen snapped. "This cabin is part of the neighborhood experience. By refusing to share it, you're breaking the HOA spirit. And we have documentation." She shook her papers like they were evidence. I almost laughed. They were nothing more than generic HOA newsletters with highlighted sentences. Not legal documents, not enforceable in the slightest. "Ladies," I said, "you have no jurisdiction here. My property is private. Leave, or I'll call the sheriff again." Karen's face twisted with fury. She wasn't used to her intimidation tactics failing. That's when she leaned closer and whispered, "Fine. If you want to play dirty, so will I. Let's see how long you enjoy your little weekend, when no one around here is on your side." And that's exactly what she set out to do. By the afternoon, every neighbor I passed glared at me. Word spread fast. Karen had told them. I was squatting on community property and ruining their plans. Someone even left a note on my truck windshield. "Selfish outsider. Get out." Her smear campaign was working. People I'd once greeted with a friendly wave now avoided me. A few even muttered under their breath when I walked by. Karen had turned the community against me overnight. She was determined to make my weekend miserable. And as I would soon find out, her next move would go far beyond dirty looks and fake violations. Because Karen's revenge plan was about to get reckless and dangerous. By Sunday morning, the tension was unbearable. Karen hadn't succeeded in stealing the cabin, but she had succeeded in poisoning the air around me. Neighbors who once waved from their porches now slammed doors when I walked by. And Karen? She thrived on it, walking around with that smug, self-satisfied grin as if she'd won some invisible war. But I wasn't prepared for how far she'd go next. I was on the porch, sipping my coffee, when I heard the sound of a truck pulling up the gravel drive. It wasn't a delivery and it wasn't a friend. It was Karen's husband. Big guy, red-faced, clearly not happy to be there. He marched up, pointed his finger in my face and barked, "You need to pack up and leave. Now." I calmly explained, again, that this was my family's cabin, not the HOA's, but he wasn't listening. He stepped closer, puffing his chest out. "You're disrespecting my wife. You think you can humiliate her in front of the whole neighborhood? You've got another thing coming." I stayed calm, but inside, adrenaline was coursing through me. Karen was standing behind him, arms crossed. Smiling like this was all going according to plan. When I refused to budge, her husband grabbed one of my porch chairs and hurled it onto the ground. "This place isn't worth the trouble," he growled. "You don't want things to get ugly." That's when I pulled out my phone and started recording. His tone changed instantly. Karen shrieked. "Turn that off! You can't record us!" But I kept filming. Her husband backed off slightly, muttering curses. But the damage was done. I had evidence. I thought maybe that would scare them off. But no. By late afternoon, the harassment escalated again. Loud music blasted from Karen's backyard. Music so obnoxious it rattled my windows. A few of her friends gathered, laughing and shouting, clearly meant to drive me insane. I ignored it at first, but then came the fireworks. Literal fireworks, set off in broad daylight, aimed dangerously close to my property line. Sparks rained down near the trees. One wrong spark, and my cabin, and the forest around it, could have gone up in flames. That was the last straw. I called the sheriff. Again. When the deputies returned, I showed them the recording of Karen's husband, threatening me, and explained the fireworks situation. This time they didn't just give a warning. They cited Karen's husband for disorderly conduct and reckless endangerment. The deputies made it crystal clear. One more stunt, and someone would be arrested. Karen's smug smile disappeared. For once, she looked rattled. But if I thought that was the end, I was wrong. Karen wasn't done yet, because her final move would shock everyone. After the deputies left the second time, silence finally settled over the lake. The fireworks stopped. The music died down, and Karen disappeared into her house. For the first time all weekend, I thought maybe, just maybe, the nightmare was over. I was wrong. The next morning, I was packing up to leave when I heard shouting outside. At first I thought it was kids playing, but the noise grew louder, angrier. I stepped onto the porch and froze. Karen was standing in the middle of the road, arms flailing, screaming at the top of her lungs. "This man stole my weekend. He stole my cabin. He ruined everything!" Her voice cracked, shrill and desperate, carrying across the lake. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. Some gathered on their porches, phones in hand, recording the spectacle. Karen's husband tried to pull her back, but she shoved him away, stumbling forward like a woman possessed. "You don't belong here!" She shrieked at me. "You're a fraud. Everyone knows it." Her face was beet red, tears streaming down her cheeks. She kicked at the gravel, pounded her fists against her thighs, and then, to my utter shock, she threw herself onto the ground, rolling around like a child throwing a tantrum. People gasped. One woman muttered, "Good Lord." Another whispered, "She's lost it." I didn't say a word. I just stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching the meltdown unfold. Because at this point, there was nothing I could do. Karen was destroying herself. Her husband begged her to stop. "Karen, get up! You're embarrassing us!" But she wouldn't. She screamed at the sky, then at me, then at anyone who would listen. And that's when the sheriff's car pulled up. Again. The deputies stepped out, already shaking their heads. One of them said, "Ma'am, we warned you. This has gone far enough." They tried to help her up, but Karen swatted their hands away, screeching, "Arrest him! He's the thief!" But it was no use. The deputies had seen everything. With half the neighborhood recording, there was no denying what had happened. Karen wasn't the victim, she was the aggressor. In the end, Karen was taken away, not in handcuffs, but in the back of a patrol car, still yelling that she'd been wronged. The neighbors, once convinced by her lies, now saw the truth. A few even apologized to me as I loaded my truck. As I drove away, I looked back at the cabin. My family's cabin. Safe. Still mine. Karen had tried everything. Lies, threats, even the cops. But in the end, her entitlement destroyed only one thing: her own reputation. And that weekend, it became a story the entire community would never forget. If you thought this Karen saga was wild, trust me, there are even crazier ones out there. And I've got them all coming your way. So if you enjoyed this, smash that like button, subscribe for more videos, and drop a comment below. What would you have done if someone demanded your cabin? Until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and never let an entitled